In dog fighting, he is a world-renowned breeder. And this is the interview with Victor AYCART. From Southern Kennels.
When did you start with dogs? It is like?
Well, my friend, it's a long story. When I was a child, about 10, 11, 12 years old, I already liked dogfights. And with a couple of friends in my city, Guayaquil, Ecuador, we always try to see who was king there, and we do road work almost every night on our bikes, with our dogs and see if we can find any fights for them. Of course there were pointers, German shepherds, collies, boxers, Dobermans and even some of them unrecognized purebreds, crossbreds, but some of them looked good. I remember watching a 35-minute fight between the two best dogs in town. One was not a breed. His mother was picked up on one of our beaches in Ecuador and she was in heat with many dogs chasing her. The other dog looked like a hunt breed dog. Anyway, I'm just trying to explain to you how fanatic I was about dogfighting since I was a kid. Later on, I don't do dogfighting until I'm 21. I knew an English gentleman, Mr. Stanley Moss. He had 2 Staffordshire dogs imported from England. They were Baron and Susie. When I saw those 2 dogs, they represented exactly what I had been looking for in a dog for years. They were compact, strong, electric dogs and are fighting machines. Of course they fought nothing but stray dogs bred on the streets of Salinas, Ecuador Beach. Immediately when they had puppies I bought 2 of them, a man I called Killer and a woman Bonnie. I matched these little dogs. They beat all kinds of dog breeds, German shepherds, Dobermans, etc. I was the #1 fighter in my city, that's what I liked, having the best. I was very happy. I liked them for a while, but then I had a lot of work and I only had them at my parents' house. I rode with them sometimes, but that was it. As they grew older I only walked them once a week. When I was about 27 years old, I took into my hands a book written by Mr. Richard Stratton, where I saw a big picture of Going Light Barney. He was supposedly a multiple-time winner. He wrote great accounts about himself and his battles, which opened my eyes. I said, wow. These are official games. There are some people who practice professional dogfights with rules, weights, etc. From then on, I became anxious about pit bulls. So I got a subscription to a magazine called the Gazette, ADBA, and imported some pit bull conformation show dogs to Ecuador. He was bred in line with the great Going Light Barney, so we started racing in Ecuador. In a few months we realized that they were nothing, there was no gameness. They all stopped in 15, 20 or at most 30 minutes, we were very frustrated. So in 1985 I was 30 years old, had moved to Miami, Florida with my family on business and started my new life there. Then, through the same Gazette, I met a person who had good dogs, Eli Jr. Bred from Grand Champion Nigerino lines. This friend lived in Sacramento, California, and I lived in Miami. Anyway, we had a good relationship and we owned a nice dog named Perry and Miss Pac-Man from AYCART, so we raised her and he sent me puppies. That same friend introduced me to SDJ, which was my big window into dogs, so I saw many good dogs and bloodlines. For the first time in my life I saw true champions and grand champions like Havana Boys CH Maggie Rom, Havana Boys GR CH Rodney, half-brother of my Mayday, Havana Boys CH Budweiser, etc. Immediately after that, I made contact with the local population through the magazine and started my direct contacts with a real pit bull world in the USA.
How did Southern Kennels start? Who are the members of Southern Kennels? Also, who helped you in the fight?
After investing a lot of money in dogs of different bloodlines like Heavy Bully Son/Eli Jr., Pure Red Boy/Jocko, Snooty and Jeep. I tried all the most important strains on the market, but I didn't get good results. I had many fights, but many defeats. So I thought if we had 100 well-bred dogs at that time, why didn't we succeed? I was originally associated with Havana Tito. I soon realized this guy wasn't going anywhere with dogs. Then I was associated with the Latin boys. The boss of the two was the Oscar of Latin, much better than Havana Tito, of course. He prepared well and loved the sport, but something was definitely wrong there. We bought good dogs and worked hard on the conditioning steps, but what really set me apart from the Latin boys was when we made a grand champion ourselves. You say how? Well, we lost 5 games, one after the other. I was very frustrated. Lots of good dogs, lots of time and money involved, and we get no success, just losses and losses. Oscar was a good boy, but not good enough to win. So after this whole long history of bad experiences, I started looking around. Who consistently won matches? I found the Exterminator Kennels record, which had won 5 out of 5 matches, which was the opposite of the Latin boys' record. It got me thinking. Then I started to study who was in charge there, and who is the person who really had to do with the success of the kennel. They were, as far as I could tell, 2 partners, Bert and Danny. Danny was the main contributor. They had some kind of falling out and the two, after years of working together, broke up. At that time I was conditioning my champion Pretty Girl for her first match, and I went to Captain D, Danny, and asked for his help. He didn't have a partner at the time, so I assumed he would help me with my conditioning program. I had a lot of well-bred dogs. I had close to 200 at that time. I just needed a good conditioner, someone serious, professional and dedicated. That person was the famous Captain D, but it came as a big surprise to me when he told me that he had to get permission from the person who taught him how to condition dogs. That person was Dr. Pepe from a laboratory. He got this authorization from his boss, but he needed someone else to help us. He mentioned Jose to me and we started working on Pretty Girl. It was a very important experience for me. This Captain D was really a good conditioner, not only because of his knowledge of food, work, etc., but how he was like a military soldier. He was never 5 minutes late, never made excuses or said he couldn't come on a specific night to work with the dogs. Not only did he show me conditioning and proper nutrition, but he also taught me how to take dogs seriously. I always remembered him saying that every day you put a little more in the dog, a little more stuff, a little more of this, at the end of the program that every little day will make a big difference in the crate. This turned out to be the truth. He was always there on time. He was a very strict teacher, rough and tough at times and strong in character, but that's how he showed me. I learned what I had to do to be a successful cacareo. I will always be grateful to Captain D. Everyone has good and bad things about Captain D. I have to acknowledge him as the man he was, a great support to Southern Kennels. It will make a difference in the future. We hope to have great success with all his lessons. We worked together, Captain D, Jose and I for years, but then Hurricane Andrew destroyed our farm and the Humane Society came to us. After that I had a terrible legal fight with them for like 2 years. Even though he won the court battle, Captain D didn't want to condition any other dogs in his life. Maybe someday he'll come back, and if he does, good competition will come back in the Florida area. He will always be a positive support to the sport. After that, Jose still worked with me for a while. He was there when I started with Mayday, Dragon Lady, Madonna, and Choice, but he left after a few months. After that I met my good friend Angel. He was a very important key to future success. My friend Angel was a nutrition expert. He showed me what Captain D didn't. Remember I said before that he was a rude person. Everything he didn't mention to me, Angel did. At that moment, with all this valuable information, Mayday and her sisters began to win in the fast lane competition. 50% is the dog and 50% is the owner. I can say this because I confirmed it with my own experiences. After that, I was alone for years. I worked my dogs with tech support from my good friend Angel. We later developed a very close personal friendship. Later I took care of Pepe from the laboratory, Captain D's teacher. He was a great friend to me too, he gave me some good advice. During Mayday's fourth match, Champion Buta broke his front right leg. My vet said he would never be conditioned again. A few days after working out, his bones would make him feel a lot of pain. During my last 2 years in the US I had the privilege of meeting a great friend, the Cuban Missing Link. He really supported Southern Kennels. He told me that Mayday could be conditioned one more time. I told him, no, that was impossible. He said I would be crazy to leave him sitting there a 4x winner without trying to make him a grand champion. That was already a year after your last contest, he could only walk on 3 legs. He told me to put him in pre-guard and if he pulled we would hook him for 5th. Missing Link told me in advance that it would make Mayday look 2 years younger, presumably no one would recognize which leg was broken. I laughed and said he was crazy. However, we started. On the first day, when we took him out at 5 a.m., he wasn't walking properly. He was a 3-legged dog, no doubt. But that was only because I never took him out after his injury. Later we realized that the leg was perfect. He did really well during training. I have to admit that if it weren't for my great Cuban friend Missing Link, Mayday would never have won their 5th match. His conditioning program was something new to me. It really sealed and locked up my entire experience conditioning. Of course, always with the valuable support of my friend Angel who went everywhere with our dogs and JC from Razorback. Today, Southern Kennels is just me, but we still have a strong relationship with Angel, Missing Link and JC even in the middle of the world where I live now. We work together matching dogs and supporting each other in many different ways. It was really a tremendous experience. I finally get some merit. It took a lot of work and a lot of bad experiences, but that's the price we have to pay for success.
What was your first dog?
She was the great Miss Pac-Man of Perry and AYCART, Eli Jr./Bully son. She was a great dog. Never can a dog not prove its mettle. She was very intense and raw. We beat the great dog Senorita who later became champion and was on the cover of SDJ. Miss Pac-Man was born on November 30, 1984. Creator Jeff McManus died when a human association jumped into Jim Perry's house. So, my first 2 champions I had as Southern Kennels, when our winning and successful time began were Champion Whitehead and Champion Pretty Girl. Both created by us. Both Champion Whitehead and Champion Pretty Girl were incredible dogs, unbeatable, with a lot of mouth, intelligence, talent and were tough scratchers. We have a beautiful little story here to tell everyone. Right after Captain D there was a lot of envy in the Florida area. They started saying that Captain D was not conditioning at all, so much has been said. We knew we had to stop talking and take action. After all that talk, we got into the pit bull business and combined 3 dogs into 3 different kennels in Florida. We call this convention Southern Kennels vs. the rest of Florida Kennels. Of course that wasn't the case, but everyone wanted to see our new name lose. The great importance of this convention was that Mr. Oscar, Latin Boys, my old partner hooked a female named Yuri against Pretty Girl. They had a little convention where they chose that dog Yuri for Pretty Girl. It was thrown at a 20-kilogram man. She played with him for a few minutes, then finished him off. She was a rough, intense and far game bitch. They swore Yuri the dog was going to kill our pretty girl or make her jump in the hole in 30 minutes. That's because Pretty Boy was famous for churning out 30-minute rough cuts. This time, however, he was bred on a dead bitch, Miss Maggie, GR.CH, Buck 7X Rom X Havana Boys CH Maggie 3X Rom. So these two dogs, Whitehead and Pretty Girl, are 3/4 Bully Son and 1/4 Patrick. That was a phenomenal combination. Unfortunately for them, both of these dogs were born complete. They took the good mouth and intensity of his Bully Son family and all the spunk and smart style of Mr. Patrick. I can say that they were almost unbeatable. We also had a great conditioning program. Captain D promised a great convention. There was much anticipation in South Florida. I remember there were 40 cars on the farm and at least 120 people there. It was amazing how many people turned out for that little convention. We had a champion rattler and Herringer's little dumpling male at 44 pounds, Bubba's son, a Boudreaux, Pretty Boy and Miss Maggie male at 42 pounds, Whitehead, a Whitehead litter female, Pretty Girl at 35 pounds. Bubba won his first game relatively easily under 45 against Fort Lauderdale Kennel, who brought in a good dog, but not good enough to beat Bubba's son. So the dog that went into Whitehead, they called him Hard Drive. He was an amazing dog, very hard to drive, with a tremendous mouth, good enough to kill dogs in 20 minutes. At this point Whitehead had already won once. We beat the Hurricane Kennels when they used a two-time winner named Butter who was a good dog, but Whitehead had beaten the winner twice in less than an hour. So those same guys, Hurricane Kennels, chose this Hard Drive dog to defeat our Whitehead. It was a difficult and intense match where the first 30 minutes were equal, until Whitehead started to lead the fight and started to submit that Hard Drive dog. Under the hour two, we threw money at all of them and they were very surprised. Right now, we've gained 2 out of 2 dogs, so logic says we have to lose the third one, until the best dog they brought was the female. And they play the life that the dog Yuri will win against Pretty Girl 1X, then they go ahead and play every last penny they had in their pocket. It was so intense. 2 little fighting machine girls met that night. That competition was so intense, fast, strong, hard and high speed. Yuri was in front until 20 minutes when Linda started to take care of that situation and started to work a lot. Finally, about 35 minutes after Pretty Girl's show for Yuri, she'll stay there all night if she needs to. Yuri starts jumping into the pit. But Pretty Girl bit her knee and brought her into the box to continue the match. A few minutes later we dealt with the dogs and the big Yuri could not resist. The Pretty Girl made an impressive scratch to win because she was very bad, only Yuri was a very bad dog. That day Southern Kennels won 3 fights out of 3 fights at that small convention. The boys have to go home with empty pockets after losing all 3 fights. Champion Whitehead and Champion Pretty Girl born March 14, 1989, breeder Havana Tito and Victor AYCART. Champion Whitehead was later sold to Taiwan and Champion Pretty Girl died of cancer a few years later in Southern Kennel's backyard.
What are the qualities you look for in a bitch breeder and litters?
For reproduction it is very important to research the lineages very well before breeding. We have to keep in mind the fact that pedigrees, or documents, don't make champions, but a good, winning dog makes your pedigree look great. Anyway, I just wanted to touch on that subject. When we talk about breeders or breeding bitches, we are talking about the future and many years invested in food, space, time and money. So we have to do a very, very rigorous selection before we decide to breed any male or female. This step will push you up or down, so it's a very important decision. The attributes I look for in any male or breeding bitch are the following. #1, Gameness. Number 2, Durability. #3, Resistance. Hashtag 4, wrestling skill. Hashtag 5, intelligence. Hashtag 6, mouth. Now those are the qualities of a great competition dog, and I believe we have to breed pit winners to produce more winners. No dog can be bred until you have tested it very well. As a consequence of any kind of inbreeding, he may lose skill, mouth, air, or intelligence. But what we can never lose is its gameness. I don't care how good he is bred, if he isn't game he won't jump on any of my females. Then on the other hand, maybe you could have a very inbred female, like brother X sister or something. If she is a cold dog, you can try to breed her to a high-caliber dog and wait to see what she can produce. I can breed any cool female if she is a well-inbred dog, but the male has to be a winning dog. In my personal opinion, if you create winners, you are more likely to produce winners.
What kind of dog do you prefer in terms of fighting style?
As far as I know, we have A. Difficult handling dogs, B. Face, head and muzzle, defensive dogs, C. Some of them with good natural air. Other than that, not without going into more extreme detail about a specific style, what I really like is a complete dog. For example, if you have a rough dog, strong biting, intensive and tries to eat his opponent in 1 minute, but he realizes that he is in front of another very good dog with the same mouth or better, he has to develop a new style immediately. That's the dog's natural intelligence, so he goes face, jaw, snout or whatever he has to do to win. That is one winning dog, and in my opinion what we all look for in a dog, winners. You have a good chance of winning in a fast-track competition when you have a complete dog like this. Without trying to advertise Mayday, that's what I'm talking about. He is extremely rude and has a terribly hard mouth. But he will switch to whatever style he needs for victory. All we need are these types of dogs, the ones that will do whatever it takes to take control of the situation and win. The first complete dog I had was Champion Whitehead from Southern Kennels. He was tough, hard punching, but smart as hell. When he had to go into defensive mode no one could catch him, and when he did he went like a bull and got his goal. I can see it in his face, Champion Whitehead, when I was in the box with him, in his eyes, and I can feel that he knew everything that was going on around him and knew when he had to change his style. Back then I said he's so smart, all he needs now is to talk. So, Grand Champion Mayday, Champion Dragon Lady and Madonna had the same attributes. Champion Choice was the only one that didn't. She was just a hard-driving bitch with a terrible heavy mouth and dead game, no doubt. That's why she is no longer with us, rest in peace. And finally, to include as part of any style, it had to be gameness. No matter your dog's style, if he has the firm resolve to stay there, trying and trying until the last minute, that will be a huge support to winning the contest. One more factor, it's not just important what kind of style your dog has or how good he is, but always remember that it's 50% you and 50% your dog. If you bring him in great shape, you've already done his part, but sometimes I have to see big, deep-set dogs in very bad shape lose a contest against inferior dogs, but in better shape. So it's not just how good the dog is, but it's also very important how good the dogman is to his owner.
GRCH Mayday, CH Choice, and CH Dragon Lady were great dogs, but is there a secret behind this litter's success?
Yes, they are great dogs, there's no doubt about it. But the key to this litter's success was that they came to the right dogmen at the right time, and they were also the right dogs. Sometimes people would say, oh, those guys at Southern Kennels were really lucky when they got these great dogs. And I will accept the concept of luck, if we agree that luck as an end result will be a combination of other situations that come with the term luck, like the end of the story. For me, luck is ability plus experience plus tenacity plus lucky opportunity. We've worked hard for years and years with a lot of time and money involved in dogs, with many bad experiences, but we've had enough game to go back and still itch until we get it. So we paid the price of success, and when I said that these great dogs came into my hands at the right time, it is because at that moment I was ready to deal with this quality of dogs. Maybe if they come to me 5 years earlier, nothing happens, we'll never know. But I'm trying to explain, that moment when I bought these dogs, I was already quite experienced about pit bulls and with a firm determination to make something big in my pit bull's footsteps in my life. I was completely determined to put all the energy, time, and money into building something special that would put my dogs and our kennel's name forever in the history of the pit bull world. If I have to say some secret about success, priority, I have to say great dogs, as they are, and then our firm decision to make this dream come true, Rom litter. Now we are working on the next step, which is to get our dogs everywhere and breed them to the right standards and try to produce great dogs like the ones that already exist in the market, like Grand Champion Lucane and Champion de Brat. We will still try to push this particular line of dogs forward until we build a new lineage of bulldogs with Grand Champion Mayday as the main sire. We'll see in the near future. I promise I'll do my best in honor of the truth. I cannot end this particular issue without first mentioning the friends who have given me many different keys at different times, but all of their knowledge has been an important support in building the success that has made the final result lucky. These friends are next. It's not the importance of the order I mentioned, just that order represents the moment they appeared during the life of my pit bull. They are Captain D, Razorback, JC, Dr. Pepe from a lab, Mr. Joe P, Angel, and Cuban Missing Link. This one represents the lock and seal of all my conditioning programs. He is a great conditioner and one of my best friends. Thanks forever, bro. All of them, at different times and in different ways, taught me at the right time when big dogs came into my hands, and I want to make public my gratitude to all of them. I always consider them all part of the success of Southern Kennels.
Have you tried to match Mayday with a particular dog, but failed?
I know you had a lot of trouble matching him after your second game. I always tried to match Mayday with anyone available. After he became champion, I decided to go into a champion, or a very recognized dogman. I was never picky. I advertised it as open to the world. If anyone was willing, I would be more than happy to travel to their backyard. That was the kind of confidence I had in Mayday. He was an unbeatable dog, period. The only match that was specifically chosen was against Mr. Tant. It was nothing personal. Jealous people started saying that Mayday could beat other bloodlines, but he couldn't beat anything coming from his own renowned gaming blood. That's why I worked so hard to get into Mr. So much. We went to Mr. Tant in nearly impossible conditions, and we still won.
I know you traveled a lot when you competed with your dogs. How do you feel about traveling to a match?
Traveling to a match is good if you have two conditions. Cacareo has to know how to do this. He has to arrive on time, not too early, not too late. The dog has to be in great shape. B. The dog you use to travel must be the type of dog that can do it well. He has to be able to do this anywhere, anytime, and be able to handle the stress of travel. He has to be able to deal with sleeping in a different place and with changing weather. He has to have a strong enough will to adapt to different people and strange circumstances. When you travel, you always lose at least 20% of your chance of winning. You need a good dog in great shape.
Without giving away any secrets, could you give our readers some of your thoughts on conditioning, feeding, and management?
I will say conditioning is the art of working the dog very hard without overtraining and good enough to go any amount of time he needs to win without destroying any of his natural attributes such as strength, power, and air. Natural that they got out of jail. We can see many times, a dog comes off the chain and is tested in play for 30 to 45 minutes without any problem, and then in his real show time he drops in just 20 minutes even if he is hot or very weak. Overtraining? I'll give you this basic advice: good training without overtraining, B. Good rest when he needs it, C. The best food you can find for him.
What was the hardest match you ever had?
That was Dragon Lady 2X against Sassy 2X. We were looking for the best 47-pound dog in the country for the third Dragon Lady match. Her first 2 wins in Puerto Rico, both under the hour mark. Our friends Powerhouse Kennels thought we were very good. Sassy Dead End Kennels Waldo conditioned Dragon Lady in Puerto Rico. He did a great job with her. Here's what happened. We flew into your own backyard from Puerto Rico all the way to Pennsylvania. We arrived a few days before that contest. We didn't know where the match would be. Unfortunately, on the day of the contest we found out that we would have to drive 3 hours to get to the venue. That was very bad news. We were very upset with the Powerhouse Kennels. They didn't handle the situation properly. We should be as close to the show as possible. Anyway, we had to drive 3 houses and the Dragon Lady didn't want to sit down and rest. She was standing in her kennel for a solid 3 hours. At that point, I was really nervous. There was a lot going on against Dragon Lady: A. Conditioning in Puerto Rico, B. Flight to Pennsylvania, C. We drove 3 hours to get to the game location, D. Within 10 minutes of arriving at that location, we were weighing the dogs, then washing and heading to the arena. E. We arrived at their yard, where the other dog was conditioned, fed and lived for at least the previous 8 weeks. In addition to all this, Dragon Lady went to another open to the world and very well created 2-time champion. She was snooty heavy at the top and red boy/Jocko heavy below S.T.P's champion Toro at the bottom. To cut this long story short, I will say that these 2 big dogs were tied at 145. We didn't know who was going to win at this point. Then, Dragon Lady started to lead the dispute by a little, not a lot, until the 2-hour mark. Then she started to do much better than Sassy. At 2:10 a.m. Sassy was rescued to save her life. Dragon Lady was working hard on her, but both girls made impressive and quick courtesy scratches. It is very important to say that they were 2:10 with no turns and no exits. We were never able to handle any of the girls. They started and didn't stop until they got Sassy. This match was what I call a classic match.
What's the biggest fight you've ever seen?
That was the Mayday Grand Champion against Tant's Cody. Not just because of how good Cody was, which later turned out to be a dead game, but because of all the circumstances surrounding the feud. It was nearly impossible for Mayday to win this match. The odds were 99% against us. Mr. Tant didn't know he was going to Mayday. My good friend Angel put Mayday on Mr. So much for us. We respect Mr. So much for a good breeder and dogman, but we had to show that Mayday could handle any red boy/Jocko dog as well. So, we went to the main source of the yellow blood of the Grand Champion, Mr. So much. We conditioned the Mayday in Florida and flew to South Carolina a few days before the pageant. That match was hooked at 65 pounds. We made a mistake on his last feeding and we were 35.5 pounds, only half a limit overweight, so we had to pay the fine. Mr. Tant was fine with that, he still wanted to do it. At 65.5 pounds he wouldn't make much difference. We paid and started washing Mayday. At the end of the wash, Mr. Tant started looking at Mayday and started saying, "That's a pretty dog, he looks like my yellow dogs. Is he who I'm thinking he is?" At this point, we were getting nervous, so he directly asked us, is this dog champion Mayday? Well, what could we say? We had to admit. He was very upset. I couldn't blame him. He said he didn't want to get in his dogs. I told him that yes, Mayday came out of Grand Champion Yellow, but you weren't the creator. The creator was Mr. Hollingsworth, who paid the stud fee. All you did was collect the money. He is only 50% his bloodline, the other 50% is Hollingsworth's careful Bolio/Tombstone blend. Anyway, after getting our ticket, he ran off the premises with his dog and left us there with the wet Mayday. Didn't even have time to finish washing him, he. We were so frustrated, I told myself this was the last time I would condition Mayday. It was extremely difficult to find any dogs capable of getting into it. Some friends like the Cuban missing link were there in the car and I asked him to take him back to Miami in his car that same night. Of course, we didn't feed Mayday that night, he stayed in the car all night until they got home in the morning. Back then, they just gave Mayday a cup of dog food. Everything is gone, we already missed the chance to make the match. That Sunday morning, when I woke up, I was very hyper and disappointed. I decided to call Mr. Tant and arrange a meeting with him. I wanted to renegotiate the situation and make this match possible. After 2 hours of conversation, we agreed on the following terms. A. We will do it on Thursday night. B. Not 65 pounds, but catch weight. C. We will play for just $1,000 against the Champion Dragon Lady. Champion Dragon Lady was known as the best 47-pound fighter in the world and Mr. Tant wanted to snatch it away from us. D. I had to take it or leave it, like that, so I took him up on his offer. I immediately called my friends in Florida and told them what I had decided to do. They all yelled over the phone that I was crazy. They all told me that Mayday looked terrible. He was completely stressed, skinny and underweight in the pit. Also, I had to put it back on the plane. My friends refused to send me my dog, but I told them he was my dog and I would take responsibility for him. I spoke to them firmly and they finally sent the dog. The doctor. Pepe from the lab was the one who sent Mayday. After shipping it off, he called and said that Mayday was in pretty bad shape. He said that he was very stressed, tired and restless, not to mention that he was very underweight in the pits. All my friends said I was crazy and all I was going to do was lose a great dog. They said it was impossible for me to win. When Mayday arrived in South Carolina the second time, he was just bones. I started to think that maybe my friends were right. Circumstances were too much, even for the greatest dog of all time. He looked completely wrecked. I have a picture of him that day. He was a completely different Mayday, he was a bundle of bones. My good friend Angel was the only friend I had left willing to help me with my task. It helped me get Mayday back in just 4 days. He stayed with me and worked alongside me. We put him on the 4. Forget conditioning, forget fortitude, all we were trying to do was get Mayday back from all the long hours of travel and malnutrition. Well, we got there Thursday night and Mr. Tant brought Cody in for 72 pounds, he was a horse. It was a smart move, he gave Cody all the rest he needed and some really good food. Furthermore, he let him gain 7 kilos. Now we will have to get into a bigger, stronger and completely rested dog. Things looked bad. Mayday looked much smaller than Cody and was stressed from the round trip. Release your dogs. And the party began. As we expected, Cody led the charge early on, pressing and punching Mayday hard in the first 35 minutes. Mayday was just trying to keep that big, strong dog on defense. He held his nose, face and throat. A few times, Mayday tried to go to the back end, but Cody was too strong and kept him out. Finally Mayday understood that he was in front of a dog much stronger than he was. So, he never tried to go back, he kept working on the front, nose, face, and throat. After 35 to 45 minutes, Mayday started to show the advantage a bit. Mayday managed to grab Cody's throat, he held that spot for a few minutes. At the 51-minute mark Mayday was on top of Cody and was really working on his throat. Mr. Tant asked us to cross out to continue. Cody wasn't moving, wasn't breathing or anything. He was like a dead dog. So we said okay, we didn't think there was any possible way for Cody to scratch. Boy! We were surprised when that dog Cody started screaming in the corner like a maniac. We were in front of a dead dog. Cody worked Mayday hard for a few more minutes, then Mayday had him in the same throat again at 103. Tant asked us again to scratch Cody to continue and we said, no. You guys get that dead dog or Mayday will finish him right there in the middle of the crate. Mr. Tant made the right call and the two boys gave him a good, hard courtesy scratch. Mayday was on fire. He was screaming and pulling in the corner and looked like he was ready to party for another hour. We finally managed to calm him down after about 15 minutes. This was his 5th fight and it's also the biggest fight I've ever seen.
What's the best fighting dog you've ever seen? The games.
Champion Dragon Lady, best fighter, smartest, most playful bitch I've ever seen.
Who are the best producers today?
Well, the records speak for themselves. Champion Jeep has the top spot on the ROM list, but Grand Champion Yellow and Grand Champion Buck are my favorites. They are up there on the list. Mayday was a phenomenal show dog, now we have to see if his sons and daughters can live up to their father in years to come. I'm 100% sure yes. The way he's raised, I'm sure he'll be one of the best producers of all time. Only time will tell if I'm wrong or not. However, we have great expectations that the big boy reproduces the qualities that made him Grand Champion.
If you had to start over in the game, which line of dogs would you use?
Yellow/Dolly, Red Boy/Jocko X Bolio/Tombstone. I would love to start with young dogs coming from Grand Champion Mayday. He is producing far beyond my expectations.
I believe Mayday is your favorite dog of all time, right?
Yes, you are right, he is a once-in-a-lifetime dog. The best I've seen and of course my favorite.
My name is Rodolpho Luiz, and I invite everyone to enjoy the knowledge of this wonderful breed. Sign up so you don't miss the next video. God bless you all.